Hello, my name is Órfhlaith Foyle and I am going to read a few poems for the John Hewitt Society, and thank you very much to Paul Madden for asking me. I'm reading from my home in Galway. Where else? So my first poem is I saw Beckett the other day, which I never did. But I did fall in love with his work and with him, and I imagined that I met him in Paris naturally. So this is I'm going to read from this book. It was published by Arlen House. It's Red Riding Hood's Dilemma. Okay. I saw Beckett the other day in the doorway of that cafe where you took his photograph. You know the one, when he looked up at the lens and realized how he could haunt us all. Hey, Beckett, I said, rejoicing in my discovery of him, his hand on the door, his eyes skimming over the interior image of cigarette smoke and coffee. I stood beside him. He rubbed his face so he might recognize me. I smiled and said, even I didn't know what was happening these days. Even I could not stop the end. He nodded, coughed, and looked sly. His teeth were yellow over the pink rim of his lips. He mentioned the photograph. He said his face had collected worms under the skin, as if ready for death, and he smiled to show them dance spasmodic with age spots and veins. Someone entered the cafe, someone left. Beckett touched the hair above my ear. I stood on tiptoe, so he could whisper down. He said nothing. It was just a kiss with the cold wind at our feet and the smoke and egg-friendly air released in draughts between the opening and closing of the cafe door, which he stepped through to find his table and entered some other world under greasy lights, coupled with table shine and coffee cups, and thoughts of death where she stood, groomed for an entrance, were held back by the odd moments of life that still strung the useful breaths Beckett used to blow his coffee cool. The next poem I'm going to read is a poem to honor one of Russia's greatest female poets, one of Russia's 4 greatest poets, Anna Akhmatova. My mother introduced me to her poetry. It's very brilliant. And anyway, my words cannot delineate you as Modigliani drew from the dark Paris mornings, and later during the terror, you wandered mad at the edge, 3 lovers gone, a son imprisoned. Perhaps the death-choked eyes of Seateva haunted you. Beloved exiles beckoned, but you turned your body tall in violet and breathed blood-fingered air. And the next poem I'm going to read for you, if I can find it. Yes, here it is. We grew up, this is a poem that I wrote for my sisters and my brother. We grew up outside Ireland. We traveled, we lived in Africa, we lived in Australia, we traveled a good bit. And when we finally returned to Ireland and made our home here, we were always asked by kids in school, where did you come from and where else did you come from? So this is my poem to my sisters and my brother. And where else? Sometimes we were mistaken for Canadians, and because we replied Australian, we seemed to make sense. School friends demanded why we weren't black, since we came from Africa too. And where else? Well, we climbed the anthills on the way to Mombasa, spoke Swahili but lived in Kikuyu land. We avoided the secret police in Malawi, grew used to the prison fence that hid the disappeared. And in Australia we learned Irish are preferred to English, Greeks and Italians are nicknamed wogs, and Aboriginals must look good for the tourists, and where else? There's Russia and Lenin's corpse, Israel, bombs in the marketplace, and Turkish delight under our pillows, and where else? And it was easy to explain away. Well, you see, we'd say, our parents are Irish, but really we're from somewhere else. And the final poem I'm going to read is actually not mine. I mentioned before the four greatest poets in Russia, in Russia's literary history, Osip Mandelstam, Boris Pasternak, Anna Akhmatova, and the one that I'm going to read from Marina Sayeteva. She wrote this poem, and it's actually in this book. I have loads of her books, but this one is translated by Elaine Feinstein, and is Bride of Ice, New Selected Poems. And this one here is, especially in the way things are today in COVID, I feel people really need things to hold on to. And I think poetry is one of those things. I know there's a huge discussion about arts and what good arts is, and I think arts is everything to human life. How else can we imagine? How else can we dream? How else can we achieve? So this is Marina Sayetayeva's kind of reason why, of being a poet, or what made her a poet. I love this poem, and it's called Some Ancestor of Mine, and this is as I said, Elaine Feinstein's translation. Some ancestor of mine was a violinist and a thief into the bargain. Does this explain my vagrant disposition and hair that smells of the wind? Dark, curly-haired, hook-nosed, he is the one who steals apricots from the cart using my hand. Yes, he is responsible for my fate. Admiring the ploughman at his labour, he used to twirl a dog rose in his lips. He was always unreliable as a friend, but a tender lover. Fond of his pipe, the moon, beads, and all the young women in the neighbourhood. I think he may have also been a coward, my yellow-eyed ancestor. His soul was sold for a farthing, so he did not walk at midnight in the cemetery. He may have worn a knife tucked into his boot. Perhaps he pounced round corners like a sinuous cat. I wonder suddenly, did he even play the violin? I know nothing mattered to him, any more than last year's snow, and that's what he was like, my ancestor. And that's the kind of poet I am.